This is the QSC LA112 from their new L-Class series of line arrays. It's a medium format active line array with a single 12-inch woofer, dual high-frequency drivers, and the most modern connections and interfaces in the industry. Rated at 136 dB of max SPL, it's the most powerful active loudspeaker that QSC has ever made. In this video, we'll review the features, compare the LA112 to other popular single 12 arrays, and take them out to 3 real-world events to see how they perform. QSC was kind enough to send out 4 LA112s, 2 array frames, and 2 ground stack adapter kits for me to demo. I had this rig for just over a month to test out. However, no money exchanged hands, and these are my honest thoughts about the system. In fact, it was actually my first time going hands-on with L-Class and hearing what it sounded like in person. Before we get into the real-world tests, let's take a look at the physical design, starting first with the mixer panel. In the driver's seat is QSC's latest digital interface, and I have to say it's my favorite digital interface that I've used on any active loudspeaker of any brand. It's super responsive, there's no lag, and the full color and text readout feels familiar and intuitive within moments of using it. To optimize your array, simply hold down the center control wheel. Once the array has finished optimizing, which typically takes around 5 seconds, you'll get a green status bar at the top of the screen on each box. Once your array is optimized, any changes you make to gain, crossover, EQ, delay, or input sensitivity on a single loudspeaker will instantly be mirrored across the entire stack, eliminating repetitive, redundant tasks during your setup time. You still have independent control over each loudspeaker when it comes to high-frequency shading and the front LED light. Each box in your array stack is able to communicate with one another using a feature called QSC Aware, which utilizes these integrated IR sensors. This means each loudspeaker knows where it's at in the array and what angle it's at, and can optimize accordingly. This function works pretty consistently well, as long as you remember to optimize the array anytime that you change the splay angle or number of boxes. However, there is nothing in the hardware or software that prevents the system from operating when it detects a mismatch, whether or not you are actually using an unsupported array angle. The digital interface also provides for networking options to connect and control your array using QSC's SysNav app or Dante. You'll also find an M10 pullback point for installations, as well as several other smaller threaded holes in various places on the mixer panel. I do wonder if these smaller threaded holes will be for some sort of future accessories, such as a rain hood for the display and audio connections. On the sides of the loudspeaker, you'll find the angle level reset button, as well as the locking lever, in addition to an integrated side handle and a few small rubber feet which will protect the ends of the loudspeaker if it gets set down vertically. Moving on to the array mechanism, I was actually really curious about the engineering behind QSC's proprietary rapid deploy rigging system. If we push the angle level controls inward, we can raise the angle bar without a box being connected to the top. In its simplest form, I found that this is essentially a hook and loop system. You'll see the female ends or loops on the top front and top rear. On the bottom of the cabinet, you'll find the male ends or hooks, with the front being fixed in position and the rear hook being the locking point. In the lock position, it's locked all the way back. In the add position, it's able to latch securely. In the remove position, it's all the way forward. My first demo session setting up, tearing down, and listening to L-Class was about 4 hours total. By the end of that, I felt pretty confident using the rapid deploy rigging system. The biggest change for me was mounting the boxes holding them from the front on the grill side rather than from the back on the mixer side. Overall, I love that a single person can rig L-Class for a simple plug-and-play array setup. Whether it's ground stacked, flown, or pole mounted, there's a lot of flexibility. One of the biggest tips I can give you after using Rapid Deploy for about a month is to always set your L-class boxes back to the add position before you put them away. That way, they'll be ready for your next array setup. If left in the lock or remove position, they won't latch properly the next time you try to connect two boxes together, and it's kind of awkward to flip both of those switches while you're still holding it. When I first saw this design, one of my initial concerns was that since the front hooks are not retractable, that they would be susceptible to being bent. But after handling them in person, these concerns seem unwarranted. The metal rigging hardware seems to be thick, durable, and double layered in some places. You'd probably crack the plastic enclosure before you bent the metal. The only other foreseeable issue I noticed with this rigging system is actually a cosmetic one. Even on these relatively new demo units, the black powder coat is already starting to wear through on the friction points. It's the same story on the array frames if you look close enough. This seems unavoidable with metal on metal friction, but since the contact points are in inconspicuous areas, it's really not too noticeable. Speaking of cosmetics, you'll notice a fine black mesh over the front grille hiding the speaker elements from view. This looks great and matches up with the K.2 and KS series of products. The matte black ABS enclosure is very sleek looking. Like any other matte black surface, it's also susceptible to fingerprints and scratches. The demo units I received came with a few light scratches on them, as well as fingerprints. After doing 3 real-world events with them, this is what they look like in terms of fingerprints. It's overall similar to the level of fingerprinting and scratch resistance that you'll find on the K and K.2 series boxes. If you take good care of your gear, it shouldn't be an issue, and they do clean up nicely. It's just obviously not going to be as easy to hide as it would be on a textured surface, but the trade-off happening here is this build material results in a lighter weight design than its wooden competitor. I'm a 6-foot tall guy, and I could hold these over my head to get them on a pole mount, no problem. But if you have a smaller stature, perhaps the LA108s would be a better fit, at 30.1 pounds. Now, generally speaking, wooden enclosures are thought to sound more musical, but honestly, I have zero complaints about the acoustics of this enclosure. The 3 splay angles supported by L-Class are 1.5 degrees, 6 degrees, and 12 degrees. This translates to a long, medium, and short throw option, depending on what configuration your event calls for. For me, having these 3 splay angle options is a happy medium. More specifically, it's a happy medium between a large format array with 1 degree splay angle increments and a constant curvature array where each box adds about 15 degrees of vertical coverage. You can see that by the time the 3rd box is added, the array becomes pretty impractical because you're shooting sound at the sky, whereas with the LA112s set to a 1.5 degree splay angle, the sound can be focused to where it's needed. In the world of medium format line arrays, having that happy medium seems completely reasonable. There's a bit of a logical flow that you have to learn when it comes to setting the splay angles on L-Class. In summary, you lock each box into the array using its own controls, but you change the splay angle of each box on the box below the one you'd like to adjust. And as others have said, this gets easier every time you do it. QSC has an entire series of training videos on how to properly use L-Class hardware and deploy an array in different configurations, so I won't get into too much detail here, but these videos will be linked in the description in case you'd like to reference them. This is the LA112 array frame, as well as the ground stack adapter kit, which consists of 2 adapters for the front A and B sides, as well as a threaded M20 attachment for securing the array frame to a subwoofer. These accessories are sold separately from the array frame, so keep that in mind if you plan to ground stack your arrays instead of pole mounting or flying them. What's neat here is when not in use, the ground stack hardware stows securely inside the array frame, keeping the components from getting lost or damaged. The array frame itself feels well made and durable, the weight isn't bad either, and since they're short and wide, I was able to find a place for them in transport pretty easily. Putting the ground stack adapters on for the first time, I will admit, took some trial and error. But once you figure out there's only one way they can go on to make the holes line up, you start to build more confidence attaching them. Again, this hardware is proprietary and new, so having to learn how to use it is to be expected and completely acceptable. Now, according to QSC, the matching L-Class subwoofer, the LS118, will be available mid-2024. My understanding is that it will feature the same performance specs as the KS118, but with a new physical design that adds a second M20 mounting point to the side of the cabinet. The top M20 mounting point will be for the LA108 array frame, and the side mounting point will be for the LA112 array frame. The current KS118 only has a single M20 thread on the top of the subwoofer. According to QSC, the KS118 is not technically compatible with the LA112 array frame. This is due to the fact the array frame is actually slightly bigger than the top of the KS118, and once mounted to the M20 thread, the front of the array frame sits about halfway off the front of the KS118. But since the LS118 has not come out yet at the time of this video, I decided to use the array frame with the KS118 anyway and had no issues. This isn't technically a supported configuration. A better way would be to flip the KS118 on its side, put the LA112 array frame on top, which actually fits great, throw a strap over, tighten it down, and then ground stack like normal. That being said, the array frame is a perfect fit with the KW181. It matches up with the exact dimensions of the subwoofer, so no worries there for all of you who still own and love your KW181s. On the topic of power, the LA112s don't have a power switch. They turn on as soon as they're plugged in and turn off as soon as they're unplugged. I did notice that the LA112s do take about 20 seconds to boot up, which makes sense because that digital interface contains a microprocessor with its own firmware, settings, and wireless connectivity. It's also worth mentioning the boot time on the LA112s is a mono task, which means no audio signal can pass through the loudspeaker until it's finished booting. So if you lose power during an event, whether it's by accident or a tripped breaker, you will have to wait almost that full 20-second boot up time before the audio signal will return. And plugging back in 3, 2, 1, plugged in. Compared to a normal point source speaker, this is quite longer. They also have a standby function in case they're in an install, which helps to decrease unnecessary runtime on the amp when not in use. Of course, no professional line array would be complete without its own software. This is where QSC's System Navigator app comes into play. SysNav allows you to connect, control, and monitor your L-class line array. Moreover, it provides access to real-time telemetry and all the tools that you might need to optimize your array. A feature I really love in SysNav is Array Installation Modeling, or AIM, which allows you to determine what height and splay angles are needed to cover any given space. Let's take a look. This is what AIM looks like when you start new. First, let's edit the venue. The stage is about 4 feet off the ground, and with the curtain closed, it's about 6 feet deep. Now let's add another section. We'll call this one Dance Floor. Let's set the starting point to be right where the stage ends at 6 feet. I took measurements of the venue in advance, so I know the length is 70 feet. Finally, we'll set the audience height to standing. As you can see, this adds an orange dotted line to our graph. I set the audience standing height in the preferences to be 5.5 feet, but you can change this value to whatever you'd like. Next, let's edit the array. We'll change the speaker model from the LA108 to the LA112. And the speaker quantity to 2, since we're only looking at the side profile of a 4-box system. We'll change the deployment method to tripod stand, position the stand at 3 feet on the x-axis, which is in the middle of our 6-foot stage, and then we'll set the stand height to 5 feet. As you can see, this means the very top of our array will be about 7 feet. Let's confirm the array tilt angle is set to the -7.5 degree down tilt since we are on the stage. And then using these measurements, SysNav will help you determine the ideal mounting height and splay angles for your array. This modeling is essential to make sure you're maximizing your vertical crowd coverage, which as you can see we are. In this configuration, our coverage beam crosses the center of the standing height axis right in the middle of the dance floor, which is perfect. This provides a much higher level of precision and control over your array deployment and room acoustics as opposed to simply eyeballing it. The larger your array is, the more valuable these array modeling tools become. This demo shows what it would look like using a deployment of 18 LA112s, 6 on the left, 6 in the center, and 6 on the right. You can adjust things like the system gain, EQ, crossover point, delays, high frequency shading, and much more. SysNav divides controls into 4 main tabs, which are Audio, Telemetry, Network, and Dante. Step-by-step tutorials for SysNav are covered in QSC's training series videos, which are linked in the description in case you'd like to reference them. SysNav is currently available for Windows and iPad. I'm hoping it will be made available for Mac sometime in the future so that even more L-Class users will be able to take advantage of this software. Here are the tote bags for the LA112s. They're made of heavy-duty nylon and feature a large zippered pocket on the front for storing cables. The main compartment is nicely padded, and it fits one speaker inside snugly. I also found that even in their tote bags, 2 LA112s can be stacked to fit in the backseat of a pickup truck for easy transport. One small detail that I really appreciate from QSC is the length of their speaker power cables. I measured it out against JBL's PowerCon cable and the classic QSC locking IEC and found that the new True 1 cable is the longest of the bunch at 10 feet. On the topic of True 1, this connector is currently the industry standard, weatherproof, and has been nothing but a pleasure to work with so far. You're looking at 3 of the most popular single 12-inch arrayable loudspeakers. These 3 designs share many similarities. All 3 can be set up and taken down quickly, they can all be rigged by a single person, and all 3 can be pole-mounted, ground-stacked, or flown. Let's take a look at the specs and compare the similarities and differences, starting first with L-Class versus VRX. Both have a single 12-inch woofer, single XLR in and out, and both have a 136 dB peak SPL. They have a similar coverage angle at 90 and 100 degrees respectively. While the VRX has 3 high-frequency drivers, the 2 on the LA112 are larger in size. At negative 10 dB, their frequency response is within 4 Hz of each other. However, as those levels increase, the JBL low frequency response worsens to 75 Hz at plus or minus 3. We don't have a measurement for the LA112 at plus or minus 3 dB, but we do have a measurement at negative 6 dB, which is only a 5 Hz difference from the initial negative 10 dB measurement. Both also have some sort of shading, although the VRX is a coarse 3-position selector to increase or decrease by 3 dB, whereas the LA112 allows you to dial in a precise decibel measurement for each box in the array. The LA112 also has the advantage of being able to set a delay. When it comes to power draw, the LA112 only draws 1.5 amps, which absolutely beats the VRX's rating of 6 amps max per box. It's worth noting here, the QSC measurement is at 1/8 power, defined as typical program material with occasional clipping. And I can assure you, the LA112s are very hard to clip, and that's coming from somebody who will absolutely clip K12.2s at your average event. The LA112s are on another level. I mean, I never heard them clip, guys, even at the highest output levels. Never saw it, never heard it. So that's saying a lot. The VRX measurement is only specified as max power draw with no other information, so we kind of have to take this figure at face value. Even if the power draw on the LA112 were to double at 1/3 power, which is riding the limiter super hard, the LA112 would still be around twice as efficient as the VRX. This power efficiency is one of my favorite features of L-Class because doing mobile DJ work, every amp counts. During the football game at which we demoed the LA112s, my right speaker stack was actually sharing power with a TV production crew who had their lights and a camera plugged into the same circuit, and again, no issues, even at the highest of output levels. Next, let's compare the LA112 to the KLA12. They both share a 90-degree horizontal coverage angle and very similar vertical coverage angles of 15 and 18 degrees respectively. They both have a single 12-inch woofer, but the LA112 has the benefit of dual high-frequency drivers, whereas KLA only has 1. This will directly translate to more throw. The LA112 is also staggeringly more powerful, boasting 136 dB. In terms of power draw, advantage to the LA112, and of course L-Class is the only one in the lineup that is Dante compatible, and also has the advantage of a mobile app. Advantage to the L-Class when it comes to arrayability, being able to select a short, medium, or long throw versus being stuck at a 15 or 18 degree constant curvature every time you add another box. For the high pass filter, the LA112s let you cross over at 80 or 100 Hz, whereas with the KLA, the only crossover option is 100 Hz. The LA112 also has the advantage of being able to set a delay. The LA112 also has the advantage when it comes to shading and being able to dial in an exact amount of high frequency shading that you desire. Comparing frequency responses at -10 dB, the KLAs are actually capable of hitting a little bit lower at 44 Hz versus the LA112s at 53 Hz. So if you're looking to get more bass without a subwoofer, slight advantage to the KLAs. It was enough to be audible in person comparing side by side. You were definitely able to tell that the KLAs have a little bit more low end.
That sounds like more top endy, and then this just sounds more like mid heavy. You know, if I had to give it one characteristic.
There's actually an advantage to having a little bit less bass in your top speakers when you're using subs, because then you can push them harder without hitting limits. So kind of a draw there. Going up to -6 dB, the frequency response, again, the KLAs are still hitting lower, 49 Hz versus 58 Hz, but that gap is starting to close. And if you're using subwoofers, it's not going to matter. The KLAs are just not going to be able to keep up with the LA112s, especially having two high frequency drivers. They're going to be louder and definitely throw farther. This was a huge football game. As you can see, it's standing room only on the away side, and for the home team, it was their 13th win in a row, which is insane. So this is a championship. There was a lot of energy at this game, and the background sound level of just people cheering was already pretty loud. Now this is a 10,000 seat stadium with about 5,000 seats on the home side. However, I'm mainly playing for the student section, which holds about 500 kids. First, let's listen to some female spoken word. The cheerleaders were using a Shure KSM9 microphone, and this was recorded in stereo with the Zoom H6, as well as in mono with a Rode VideoMic Pro Plus, facing directly at the right speaker stack.
Broncos, we're fired up tonight, aren't we? That's the energy I like to see. Now give me a B. Give me an R. Give me an O. Give me an N. Give me a C. Give me an O. Give me an S. What's that spell? Who are we? Let's keep this energy up, you guys. Student section, let's get loud in the third quarter. Student section, let's get even louder in the third quarter. Keep cheering on your Broncos. Help us out with defense. 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 2 more defense. Defense. Last time defense. Defense. Let's get excited, Broncos. Let's go defense. Let's go. Make some noise, Broncos. Broncos. Broncos! 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 2 more!
As you can hear, the LA112s produce clean, clear, and transparent vocals. Additionally, the KSM9 gives an extra sparkle to the high frequencies that sounds very pleasing in real life. Next, let's take a listen to high-impact music. This was the highest SPL application that I encountered during my testing.
Just come outside for the night. Take your time, get your light. Let it night.
watch, Prezi plain Jane. Lamborghini chain, rest in peace to my superior. Hermes link a feed a village in Liberia. TMZ taking pictures causing my hysteria. Mama see me on party people. Party people. Party people. Party people. Let me hear you say, woo, badass, woo, badass, woo, badass, woo, badass. Girls in the club know the deal when we come around. They show us love 'cause they know how we get down. Estamos en alta, nunca le vamos a bajar. Ten cuidado con el fuego, te va a quemar. We're making it hot, we're making it hot. Dinero, dinero y no vamos a parar. We're making it hot, we're making it hot. Dinero, dinero y no vamos a parar. We're making it hot, we're making it hot. Dinero, dinero y no vamos a parar.
You should see the things we do.
Throw your hands up around.
Left side, right side, we gon' set this thing off right. East side, west side, we gon' set this thing off right. North side, south side, we gon' set this thing off right. I said north side, south side, we gon' set this thing off right. Ow!
What really caught my attention is how tight they sound. If you imagine a single beat, it's being emitted from 14 different transducers in this scenario. It was noticeable how all of the sound was hitting you at precisely the same time and arriving together in phase. In other words, the sum of the drivers sounded very cohesive. This is thanks in part to QSC's new LEAF Waveguide, as well as the FIR and IIR filters they used in the DSP of this box. QSC is calling this feature Acoustic Linear Phase Design, and I definitely noticed it in the moment before I went home, researched it, and figured out what it was. QSC's new LEAF Waveguide stands for Length Equalized Acoustic Flare. This waveguide ensures the length of the path of the high frequencies is precisely equal between the openings of the drivers. As the sound waves make their way from the compression driver to the mouth of the speaker, they flow through curved paths that are length equalized. By the time they exit, the sound waves being produced are in unison with each other, resulting in tighter high-frequency phasing and consistent coupling with adjacent boxes. This precision also helped to enhance the stereo effect in recorded music, making it sound how it was intended to when the producers mixed it in the studio. This whole time, the heatsink on the back of the speaker only got warm, but not hot and definitely not too hot to touch. I never audibly heard the LA112s hit limit during any of this testing. Additionally, I found that the LA112s are every bit as powerful as the VRX and so much better sounding. The rear rejection on the LA112s was also great, considering that it's not designed with any side-firing or rear-firing cardioid drivers. This means there was a noticeable quiet zone behind the speaker. During gameplay, we usually try to avoid sending music or microphone feed towards the field. However, during warm-ups and team introductions, the coaches actually wanted the music louder on the field, even though it was already blasting on the audience side, at which point I removed one of the LA112s from the ground stack, turned it around, and problem solved. After warm-ups, you can see just how quickly I was able to redeploy it back into its normal configuration. At the end of the game, the home team won their championship and the students were allowed to rush the field, so I turned around one of the ground stacks to send music out to the field. The throw on the LA112s handled this distance easily. For the middle school dance, I set up the LA112s using the Splay Angles that were recommended by SysNav after calculating the system and venue characteristics, and in my professional opinion, I think they were completely correct. This test was recorded in stereo with a Zoom H6 recorder centered in the back of the room from the same perspective as the camera angle. Let's take a listen to what it sounded like.
Watch me dance, dance the night away. My heart could be burning, but you won't see it on my face. Watch me dance, dance the night away. I'll still keep the party running, I want that place. Lately I've been moving close to the edge. Stupid look in my face. I stay on the beat, you can count on me. I ain't missing no steps.
Push it up, let me see it, yeah.
The LA112s sounded fantastic indoors with no noticeable echo issues. I was also surprised by the amount of headroom and found myself pulling back the levels by about 3 dB because it was simply more sound than the event required. Whereas with K12.2s, I would have been pushing them fairly close to the limit. Lastly, here is the setup for the holiday parade. This is a volunteer-based event, so I kept the setup pretty straightforward and simple. This event does come with some unknowns when it comes to power. Since I'm set up on a street corner, a nearby business has to leave an extension cord sticking out of a locked door for me to use, but I had no way of knowing how many other things were plugged into that same circuit. That's why it gives me peace of mind knowing the LA112s only use 1.5 amps each, and as expected, there were no power issues. The LA112s were ran in full range mode with no subs for this event, and I thought they sounded great. Plenty of bass with the 412s, even though it's not going to hit lower than about 53 Hz. The lowest box also had high frequency shading enabled of -2 dB, just to slightly soften the sound impacting the nearest sidewalk, while the top box had no high frequency shading so that it would be throwing across and down the street completely uninhibited. The program material was a mix of music and male spoken word, once again using the Shure KSM9 microphone. This test was recorded in stereo with a Zoom H6 audio recorder placed about 15 feet in front of the right speaker stack. Keep in mind, the audio you're hearing is from in front of the speaker, but the camera perspective is from behind the speaker. Here's what it sounded like with just voice only.
Here comes the Buchanan Educational Center Instrument Music Program, which serves over 450 student musicians with the goal of providing outstanding experiences in music. The Buchanan Marching Band is performing Jingle Bells Forever tonight. This combined marching band consists of over 350 members and is one of the largest marching bands in the Central Valley. Today they are also joined by the Clovis Area Elementary Color Guard program, Into the Blue, and the Clovis Area Elementary Percussion Ensemble, the Blue Diddles.
And here's what it sounded like with both music and my voice at the same time.
Merry Christmas from Copperwood Training Stables. They offer year-round riding lessons, multiple camp programs, as well as horse breeding. Dedicated to living the cowboy way, stop by and visit them. Yeehaw! CAL FIRE, Fresno County Fire Engines. These guys respond to all types of different emergencies. These apparatuses you see here tonight are just a small example of the resources that will be sent to help you if you need it. And here are members from the California Highway Patrol Fresno area office. They want to remind you to always slow down, buckle up, and put those cell phones down while driving. They're here keeping us all safe on the roadways, providing their motto, safety, service, and security. Next up, 559 BMX Racing, dedicated to all BMX riders here in the Central Valley. Happy holidays from 559 BMX Riding. Next up, the Clovis North Bronco Band and Color Guard. Happy holidays from Clovis North, and go Broncos!
Run, run, Rudolph, Santa will make it in town.
Riding through a winter wonderland, here comes Clausen Motorsports, your one-stop shop for your next on- or off-road adventure.
Reeling like a merry-go-round.
As you can hear, it's not even a struggle to have music and talk over it at the same time. After the parade was over, I actually had a guy come up and tell me that he was an auctioneer and how great the speakers sounded from out in the crowd. He even took a photo of the LA112 label on the back of the speaker so that he could go out and buy his own. So nothing but compliments on the sound quality. The distance throw on the LA112s is right where I would expect for a medium format line array. This clip was shot from about 100 feet away, and they were throwing this far no problem.
Top of the heap. These little town blues are melting away. I'll make a brand new start of it in New York. If I can make it there, I'll make it anywhere. It's up to you, New York, New York.
What's even crazier is they weren't anywhere near limit, and this was also using the widest splay angle of 12 degrees. At 6 degrees or 1.5 degrees, you'd be getting even more throw. These were just a few small-scale jobs that I threw at L class. To get a second opinion on the LA112s, I brought them over to my friends at CDH Productions here in Central California. They're a full-service AV company, offering everything from video walls to lighting to pro audio. They've been using KLAs for their smaller line array rig for years. I let them set up the LA112s on their own, and here's how it went.
You push in the little latch.
Push, yeah.
I think when you lift it.
I think we're as flat as it goes.
Yeah. Well, it's got to go up one.
You want it up like that?
Yeah, that looks like a flat. No, maybe one more for a flat pack. That's probably a flat pack. Yeah, that looks like flat. What's this do?
That's the sub M20 threaded thing,
Oh,
so
so
everything stows in there.
Nice.
For when you're not using it.
Yeah, I like
Dang.
that. The old flat hardware, it separates it.
Right.
You can't hit it, but still plastic. It goes together a little easier. You know, I like you can tight pack it.
I mean, it took us, what, like 5 minutes?
Yeah, and that was us figuring it out. Based on the new KLA.
They flew 2 LA112s on a forklift using the array frame and then put one of my KS118s underneath it. They EQ'd them using an X32 mixer. The LA112s seem very responsive to the EQ. The music filled the parking lot area all the way to the back wall, no problem. And these were far from ideal conditions, with the arrays somewhat inside the shop door.
So I've been doing pro audio for about 10 years now. Since I've been doing it, I've always been using some kind of QSC product, either as a main, as a monitor, as a front fill, as just an amplifier for your mains. I mean, they're everywhere, you know, so I would say I have a fairly good working knowledge of them, as well as somebody can have, I guess. And the main thing I noticed different with the L series was it's a little bit cleaner, just across the whole board. We A/B'd them with some KLAs, and the KLAs sound good, but they had like a little bit of low mid heaviness that is just a little undesirable, and they sounded cleaner across the board. And I didn't even really get to mess with the Dante integration on them, which it seems like really useful for installs and churches and people who have a lot of network stuff and a lot of stuff that they need to get into remotely. You know, if you have it set up there and you need to remote in and check on any of the whatever's going on in it, I know that that's a useful feature with speakers. The new array hardware, I do like it. I think it'll take some getting used to, but it's pretty easy. It's just as easy. I like how one man can do it, because sometimes it's easier to just hang stuff by yourself. I know you know about that. Sometimes just let me do it. Let me hang it myself. I mean, it feels really strong. It feels good. I like how you have a little bit more directionality. Basically, like, you know, flat pack and then a medium angle and then harsh angle. So it's like, okay, that's all you really need. You don't need like 12 different angles. You guys need to be able to either play flat or do this, you know. So it really, and it probably makes it a lot easier for people who aren't as familiar with like rigging boxes. It's like there's not that many ways to mess it up. I think it's a lot easier than the KLAs for some reason, because at least you could physically see the numbers, you know, and the way it locks in is a little bit easier. You just kind of slip them in and rest them, and then you just set them on the side. So I think it's actually easier than the KLAs now that I've been thinking about it, you know, working my way through it. I'm like, okay, I do like them a little bit more than the KLAs. And also it's, you know, the flexibility. You have like, there's just enough flexibility to give you some options.
If there's one thing I hope viewers can take away from this video, it's that QSC's hardware and software have both proved themselves ready for bigger and more intricate productions than ever before possible. With the high output power, power efficiency, and ability to change splay angles, it's clear how much thought has been put into the design of L-Class. Moreover, it's clear that the QSC design team has been listening to community feedback. L-Class, in my view, has rightfully earned its place in the category of medium format line arrays. For the features you're getting like Dante, True 1, 136 dB of SPL, and the impressive power efficiency, the price seems on par with similar medium format line arrays. While these aren't cheap compared to point sources, it's a compelling value when compared to other medium format arrays with similar specs. That said, I would love to see a version of L-Class released without Dante, offered at a cheaper price, aimed at those of us who don't expect to be using Dante by 2030 or within our line of work. But it makes perfect sense for a larger production company, touring band, or an install. Really any situation where you've got a ton of boxes and mix from front of house. Lastly, I hope to see the same level of innovation catch up to the oldest end of QSC's loudspeaker lineup. The KW mixer panel hasn't changed since it was first released in 2010, and it's starting to feel dated compared to the rest of QSC's loudspeakers without that digital interface. That said, thank you all so much for watching. If this video was helpful, feel free to drop a like, consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the comment section.